Welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of Cocoon by Zhang Yuzhuan, translated by Jeremy Tiang. I apologize if I'm pronouncing these wrong and for my struggling. I only have Google pronunciation fallback on here, and I try. Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, this is a general fiction book from China. As I said, it's a translation. It's from 2019. It's from World Editions. So I received this book as an ARC from NetGalley in exchange for a fair review because it sounded interesting, and I'm trying to branch out and read books from other cultures, not my own. I will admit that no, this is not a science fiction. I am allowed to read other genres once in a while, guys, but don't worry, I'm also reviewing The Fall of Hyperion on Thursday, so there's the sci-fi for you. And We All Died at Breakaway Station next week. I also have a horror book I'm reviewing next week to lead us into October, so don't worry, I'm not going to just read translated books all the time. We're going to have more sci-fi. Back to Cocoon. This book is psychologically complex and intricately plotted. It's a Chinese general literary fiction, and it's a rumination on generational trauma and inherited guilt. It's really deep. What is it about? Again, apologies for pronunciation. Chen Gong and Li Jiaqi go way back. Both hailing from dysfunctional families, they grew up together in a Chinese provincial capital in 1980s. Now, many years later, the childhood friends reunite and discover how much they still have in common. Both have always been determined to follow the tracks of their grandparents' generation to the heart of a mystery that perhaps should have stayed buried. What exactly happened during that rainy night in 1967 in the abandoned water tower? Yuzhan's layered and hypnotic prose reveals much about the unshakable power of friendship and the existence of hope. Hers is a unique, fresh voice representing a new generation of important writers from China, shedding a different light on the country's recent past. First of all, just to warn you guys, the majority of this book takes place in second person, in that it's a conversation in a way between two friends catching up and revealing their side of a mystery and a falling out between them. Yet, aside from a few lines here and there, most of it is in the past tense, so you forget it's in second person for the most part, and the second person is so well done. And rather than trying to make it seem like the characters are describing you, the reader, it's obvious they're talking about one another. So it totally works, and it's a very unique and enveloping way to characterize someone. It's so interesting. The characters are very deep and complex. Most of the novel takes place during an important time in both of their lives, both in terms of what was happening around them and because they were on the brink of teenagehood. And it's clear in the scenes of them as adults that this has affected them quite strongly. The descriptions of how a child that age reacts in response to events around them was spot on. Gong and Chiachi are relatable, understandable characters who act their age and make choices that make sense to the reader. Nothing in this book is particularly eventful, which is interesting. It deals with families, and not the happiest of families. There's some neglect, some physical abuse, but nothing overly triggering for readers, I would think. And their dynamics. This isn't an our actions change the world type of story, but a dive into two families, their connection, and how parents and grandparents' choices affected the youngest generation. It's not a happy story, that's for sure, but it feels very real. It reminds me of White Teeth by Zadie Smith in that regard. I kind of got those vibes from it. Given the novel is a translation of a Chinese work, the novel focuses on the aftermath or effects of the Cultural Revolution in China, something I am afraid to say I don't know a great deal about aside from, general basic 20th century world history. So I can't really say much about that aspect of it in terms of, accuracy or whatever. This novel, though, while dealing with some family history during that time, the 60s and 70s, focuses more on my generation. I'm not sure if they call people my age millennials over there, and how they were affected by the Cultural Revolution due to how their parents were affected socially by it. But I didn't feel like I was too much out of the loop on this because most of it deals with the parents' choices than explicitly the country changing around them. So it did feel relatable. The main events of the story take place in the early 1990s, so I'm only about 3 or 4 years younger than the main characters, which really helped bring me into the story given I don't have the cultural background to identify a bit with, but I do understand that level of generational difference, despite my not living with my grandparents, because where I live that's not a super common thing. Yet, despite all this, on a personal level of reading enjoyment, it was far too heavy and depressing. It seems like while every person was complex, and that was remarkably done, it's more like most people are broken, terrible things, with good people being few and far between. Everyone apparently has no qualms about cheating on their spouses for some reason, which makes them seem insincere and hard to sympathize with. Perhaps this was more common in older generations in China. I was looking on Google, but I'm not going to trust what I read on Quora, as fact, so I'm not going to make any assumptions about other people's cultures or whatever. So I don't know. For me personally, personally, when a character cheats on their partner, I'm just like, ew. So that for me kind of rubbed me the wrong way. In truth, while I think the book is extremely well written, has moments of beautiful prose, and has in depth characters that are influenced both by their home life and society at large, I can't say I loved the book. It did drag a bit in places for me, and the end result of the mystery wasn't like that interesting. Yet, I definitely enjoyed reading it, and I think anyone who has an interest in translated works, books about family dynamics, and books about China in the late 20th century will enjoy it or find value in it. It's really, really very well done. And thanks again to the publisher. I appreciated, reading something different. So thanks.